Alô a todos do canal Japa Rico, como sempre, transmitindo diretamente aqui de algum lugar do mundo para o mundo inteiro. E hoje vamos falar, dar sequência à série Japa Rico, reagindo a outros traders, e vamos falar sobre Ukspreaddbetting com Mark. Então, vamos lá?
Warm welcome to you, thank you for joining me. Okay, so, what is...
E lembrando que ele vai falar nesse vídeo sobre, o título em inglês é Pro Tips for Day Traders, que significa dicas profissionais para day traders. E Intraday fez Shifts and Winning Strategies, que seria os shifts, né, as mudanças de fase operando intraday e as estratégias vencedoras. Então vamos lá?
Intraday phase change and how do we combat it as day traders and why do we need to be cautious? Okay, so...
Engraçado, ele vai falar isso sobre essas mudanças de fases. Eu estou interessado em saber.
Intraday phase change is basically when the market changes its conditions during the trading day. So if you can imagine, if you use something very simplistic that's got a specific open, we'll look at a currency pair in a moment, but something like the DAX, for example, could be the FTSE, could be NASDAQ, whatever. At the opening bell, you'll tend to get a period of time where there's volatility. You know, so if we look at the DAX here, opens at 8 o'clock my time.
E ele está falando sobre o DAX, né, o índice DAX.
And, you know, we've got a good range to the downside, good drive up. You know, it's a nice, big, good 100 and something, well, almost 100-point range for the DAX in the first trading hour. You know,
sim, mais de 100 pontos de variação.
First trading hour, put horizontal line on, a vertical line on here. 9 o'clock, first trading hour, bang. That is our, close enough, that is our kind of opening session. Then we get a little bit of rotation back because of the drive, etc. We get another a kind of little bit of action, but it's not quite as strong as the open, right? The open was very, very strong, very, very active.
Sim.
And then we get this kind of bit of a quieter period. Now, coming into lunchtime, we tend to get what's the lunchtime chop period. Now, this is a little bit more busier today.
Na verdade, se você for ver isso aqui, ele estava num downtrade por um bom tempo, né? Depois ele voltou mais ou menos para o preço que ele começou. Ó, ele começou aqui e depois de ele ter ficado em bearish, ele voltou para o mesmo preço que ele começou, na verdade, né? E aqui você vê que isso aqui, ele tentou ir para cima, né? Tentou fazer uma new high, até que chegou a fazer, né? Chegou a fazer por um tempo uma nova alta, só que após disso ele voltou, parece que está voltando ao preço onde estava essa range aqui embaixo, né? Essa range antes do almoço, né? Segundo Mark.
And this is because especially in Europe, we're waiting for the American market to open at 2:30. So,
é verdade, né? Isso aí que na Europa eles estão esperando para o mercado dos Estados Unidos abrir, e aí está o preço, né? Basicamente está numa range, porque aqui ele chegou, né, a voltar ao preço que começou, né, nessa range, e aqui ele iniciou e foi voltar para pegar o fundo aqui, ou seja, está praticamente respeitando a range.
So already we've got 3 distinct different phases, and we don't know what's going to happen when the Americans open for the final 2 hours of the trading session. Now, similar things do happen in the US. We have the opening drive, we have the kind of mid-morning...
E lembrando que isso aqui é o índice Dicas, né? Por isso que ele pegou, porque é índice europeu.
Rotation / maybe trend continuation. Lunchtime chop, generally just because lunchtime is always chop. Not always, let me reverse that. Sometimes when the market's active, of course lunchtime is going to be active. But generally speaking, if you look at the majority of days, lunchtime will be choppy and range bound.
Isso aqui eu concordo com ele.
And then you'll either get a kind of VWAP close or you'll get a push to extremes, depending on the day type, towards the end of the day. So, what are these different phases? The different phases are different participants getting involved. If you think about the opening orders, a lot of brokers will have orders to do at the open. A lot of decisions will be made, a lot of rebalancing, a lot of money will be moving around at the open. And so stocks are going to be bought and sold, you know, especially when talking about the indices. And we're going to get, most of the time, most of the activity during the opening period. Opening hour, opening half an hour. You know, there's no kind of hard and fast rule for this, but that's kind of the initial phase.
Sim, definitivamente. Ele tem razão.
Then the second part of the day would be either when you get a slower kind of continuation of the trend. So sometimes if it kind of looks like you're starting out of a trend day, you know, sometimes you might then get, you know, a continuation higher, not quite as aggressive as the open, But sometimes you kind of get a continuation. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of a backfill like we did today. Sometimes you might get a kind of range bound at the top of the market, which I kind of guess we did today, really, top half of the range, the kind of range conditions, a top half of the drive, should I say, range bound conditions. And then as you go into the lunchtime period, the volatility contracts even more, and it's...
Isso aqui ele tem razão também, né? Conforme que você vai indo para o horário do almoço e a volatilidade vai diminuindo.
Great example.
É claro que não é 100%, mas via de regra, né, a maioria das vezes é, como ele mesmo falou agora há pouco.
Today, actually, volatility contracts even more, and we get this kind of...
É contração da volatilidade.
Waiting for the American Open. So, what we need to be careful of is how we trade this intraday as day traders. So, when we're at the Open, we want to be very careful about fading moves too early. We want to really wait until they're stretched, have a good idea on what kind of moves we're expecting at the Open, have a good idea on our levels, have a good idea of if we're going to trade to momentum ignition, what we're looking for, this type of stuff.
Eu já escutei também isso, né, de você não operar a primeira hora, né, logo que abre a sessão, nessa primeira hora você não opera e você somente espera para ver o que vai acontecer.
And so...
É uma prática, não somente o que eu aprendi, mas também é uma prática que muitos traders usam, na verdade.
As we then move into the next phase, again, we've got to be a little bit careful about buying breakouts. You know, if we're a breakout type trader, the Open's the time to do it, if I'm honest. If you like to trade your breakouts, trading them at the Open is your better time, in my opinion.
Também acho. A gente não opera breakouts aqui no canal, vocês sabem disso. Mas se você realmente insistir em operar breakouts, eu diria que o opening, né, na abertura seria a melhor coisa.
Because you're just getting that extreme, you get the supply-demand imbalance much more significant. Then, coming to the second phase of the day, you know, you're going to be careful. I'm just going to mark these off here, guys, so we can kind of talk about them. You know, the second phase of that is a 2, promise you. The second phase of the day, been a little bit more careful, can get continuation to trends, but it's the type of thing where you wait for the pullback. Rather than you buy the break on here, you buy the break and you're looking for a pullback because it's momentum. When you're into phase 2, if you're going to buy a break and you kind of have got your thesis, you think that's good, then waiting for a rotation back before you enter in the direction of the trend is probably more wise. As you come into phase 3, just not buying breakouts at all. If anything, mean reversion or stepping away. Often a lot of day traders, myself included, like to take a break during this period and go, you know...
Isso aqui eu acho que é step away que ele falou, né? Já fique de fora. Eu acho que essa é a coisa mais condizente de fazer durante o lunch break, né? Durante o horário do almoço.
Well, let's come back. The US Open, let's see exactly what's happening in the session. But the very...
Sim, e voltar durante a sessão americana, na verdade.
Be very careful about taking breaks in the midday, because very often it's the extreme, very often it's going to rotate, very often you're going to get double tops, double bottoms. It's a great example of today. It's almost perfect. Sits in a tight range, not a lot going on whilst we wait for the Americans to come on board and start to shuffle the money around. So, and then as you come into the kind of fourth or fifth phases, probably just about four phases for the European indices. That's going to be driven mostly by how the US markets open, the US indices open. If they're driving higher off the open, then you may well get continuation and a break of this high. Great. If they're driving lower, this might then rotate down to here. So it kind of moves in a proxy then. So the important thing, guys, is to think about market in different phases, and you can split it up and using different strategies for each phase.
Beleza. Então foi isso aí, pessoal. Eu já entendi o que ele quis dizer sobre, né, multiple phases, né, múltiplas fases do mercado. Não, na verdade, não utilizamos esses termos, mas enfim, ficou muito claro o que ele quis dizer sobre essas fases. E concordo, né, com a explicação que ele deu, que o Mark deu, concordo com o que ele falou. O que vocês acham sobre isso? Vocês operam dessa maneira? Vocês têm essa ideologia de utilizar múltiplas fases ou não? Vocês sabiam né, que no horário do almoço não tem tanta volatilidade, a maioria do pessoal está esperando, né, o mercado dos Estados Unidos abrir. Não sei se vocês sabiam disso. Se sabiam, escrevam aqui. E o que vocês acham desse React? Então escrevam para mim, foi o primeiro React de 2024 e espero vê-los em breve. Obrigado e até mais. Tchau!